Good morning. Yes, it's 9:02. I'm 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Today's word is muster. And I didn't muster on time because mustering on time would have been 9 o'clock. Exactly. But of course, my printer decided it wanted to take its time printing out something and I decided to change at the very end. But how are you doing today? Today is Friday. We're on to another weekend. What's your plans for the weekend? What do you have planned? I know it is Mardi Gras season, and a lot of people are getting ready to celebrate. But it looks like the weather doesn't want to cooperate. Today, it's supposed to rain, especially this evening when some of the parades are going on. And we're not far from Mobile, Alabama, which claims to have been the first location to ever have a Mardi Gras parade. However, the Trumpsters, of course, would be those that are in New Orleans to say that they have. I've been to theirs, and they are so huge. The floats look like buildings on wheels. That's how grand they are, and it's quite something to see. If you've never seen it, if you've never been to it, it is so much fun. In fact, if you don't pay attention, you will get hit in the head with beads and moon pies and all kinds of things that say celebration. So, I would like to go to one, and maybe I'll go to one, downtown here once the weather kind of hopefully cooperates. But I'm not going to go stand in the rain. So I don't know. They didn't cancel the one for here, but they canceled one for someplace else. Good morning, Ro. Good morning, Joan. How are you doing, my two sweet people? Joan, meet Ro. Ro is a sweetheart. She does yoga, and she and we met a few weeks ago, and so I'm happy to know her and hopefully form a relationship where there's mentoring going on because she is so smart. Like you, Joan, very, very smart, very articulate, on top of things. So today I thought I would talk about the word muster. And, I worked for the military for, I think it was 32 years. So muster was, of course, it was in every person who ever either worked for the military or was in the military. You understood what time you were supposed to be someplace, what you were supposed to do, what inspections you had to overcome and meet in terms of your dress, your whatever it was that you were to say in terms of mannerisms, assignments, working, all those things were a part of the mustering process. And that's so funny because many of the people who are in the military or work for the military, we know what it is to be someplace on time, do what we're supposed to do, carry out the requirements of what the assignments or the jobs are. And so I said, you know what, I kind of like that word muster. I said, because even though it has the military connotations that speak to on time, doing what you need to do, the civilian world uses it too. We use it. We have to be places. We have to do certain things. Some people are never on time. They never will be on time. But anyway, I found this poem that I just thought was just kind of cool. It says standing muster. And we don't even realize anytime we show up and we've assembled, there's some form of mustering that goes on. Our churches, our schools, all of those things. It says that there's going to be some form of assemblage of people coming together. Now, space may be an issue, where people have to be lined up a certain way, or there's so much distance between people, but whatever, you're still talking about the fact that there was a muster. So it says standing muster, and this is by Michael Prunecki. But it says standing muster. It says, I suppose if you didn't know better, you may have thought you were in your innocence, that all we had to do as soldiers was fall out in good order for inspection and count 1, 2, 3. As the platform leader reported us present and accounted for, and the first sergeant, to the first sergeant. Like insects in columns, we marched to the cadence of squad leaders down the dusty roads to our destiny, awaiting us around the next bend, always in good order towards the foe, posed to strike and destroy us in the proper order, one by one. Now we lie row on row in good military order beneath metal markers from sea to shining sea. God bless us, one and all. And I think about, those who have been away to war, or they've been in a situation where they're preparing to make sure that, they honor their duty in every way of saying that, I'm where I'm supposed to be, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do in guarding the country. But we, even as civilians, don't even realize that we muster. We do muster. Here's another one that I like. This was by James Casey, and it speaks to what he felt mustering was all about. It says, every day we go to muster, we all stand for a while in a loose cluster. Sometimes the sun shines brightly. Then they, again, you'll do it nightly. Like good little soldiers, it says, we stand in a row. Where in the hell do they think we could go? There are no clouds up in the sky. Every now and then one hears a sigh. Complaining really doesn't do any good. Stand at attention like sticks of wood. An officer wanders through the ranks, checking under arms, looking for shanks. He never, ever writes us up. You see, they need us too damn much. We're here again right before sup. Gonna check and see whose time was up. And in that instance, they talk about how prisons making sure that everybody comes and they assemble. But even though we're not talking prison, which would be restrictive, or military, which also has its restrictions, we have formed our own way of how we muster. Churches muster, school is muster. When you think about the things that we come together for, we come together for a purpose. And even though we may not be ordered there, sometimes in our minds we're ordered there. We're just told that we need to be someplace at a certain time to do a certain thing. And, even when they have big rallies or big demonstrations, someone has probably put out the word, this is where you need to be at this time for this purpose. And we make it. Some of us aren't going to ever be on time, and we're not really interested in mustering. So, I asked you this morning, have you ever been stuck being requested to muster some way that you knew, somewhere where you knew you shouldn't be? Well, I remember, being caught up with friends who said, hey, we need to go here. And I'm thinking, why? Even though I may not physically get out the question, I might tag along. And before you tag along, next thing you know, you're in the middle of people that have come together for a purpose that you may not even be sure about. Good morning, Cheryl. Today, our word is muster, which means to assemble. It says troops or others, especially in inspection or preparation for battle, or collection or assemble for just the amount of people that come together. The numbers, they're looking at numbers. So it's not always having to do with the military or fighting or, being in what I would call in a protective mode. Sometimes we don't know how we come together to assemble, but we do. And generally it's because we believe in somebody that says it is time for us to be there. Good morning, Miss Rosie. How are you doing? Good to see you in the space. Thank you so much for stopping in. So when we really look at mustering, we talk about assemblage. We talk about bringing people together, calling, like a call of togetherness, a rally. In times of war, it may be marshaling. Good morning, Mr. Eddie. How are you? Wonderful, wonderful. Tell Miss Gwen hello. It says it also talks about organizing in such a way that there is a mobilization that goes on. Before we know it, we've been mobilized. And says there may be a roundup, a summons. How many of us have been summoned to things? And I know military members know what I'm talking about because they understand the whole concept of mustering. But sometimes we don't know that even as civilians, we've mustered for whatever reasons. And we never called it muster, but it means the same thing. We still gather together for a collective effort or a unified effort or unified concern. It says where we've convened, we may have been recruited, or we might have been drafted, or we might have been told, as they say, voluntarily told that we will volunteer. Those things happen. So, I always ask people, have you ever been a part of, something that says, I am stuck? Are you stuck? Sometimes we get stuck. We get stuck with other people's stuff that we didn't research. We don't know much about it. And so we become a part of it. So when we look at the word muster, the M for me, the first letter says mobilize. How do we mobilize? And it says it could be by country or government. It could be by organizations. It could be by service, be it active service or civilian service, just serving the community. Manipulate. Ooh, that's good. Manipulation is good, to be manipulated. And sometimes we are, we could be manipulated easily if we become caught up in what it is that the initial belief is, and that catches us into the next step and then the next step. And before we know it, we've been a part of something. So mobilizing also talks about we might be going off for a while. It could be a deployment. I just think about things like January 6th, or I think about, being called to war, or even if it's just, and not just, but even if it's something like, just demonstrations, in the streets. I was looking at I think it was the university teachers in California. They only had a 1-day strike, but it worked for them because the management said, well, they do deserve, what they're asking for. And sometimes that's what happens when people come together and they muster. Maneuver is really a good word too, because that would be a maneuver. So it also talks about it could be a call up. It could be an, organized way of dealing with a problem. That would be like a demonstration, or it could be a walkout. I just remember, even in undergraduate school, I remember we decided we weren't going to go to school, go to classes. And so, the administration said, well, we'll just cancel classes, meaning because we see that there's some unrest. And so that would be a part of this whole idea of why people muster, and they do maintain. That's a good word. Good morning, Maurice. How are you? Welcome, welcome. Today our word is muster, which means, collective coming together. For military troops, it may be assemblage, but, we as civilians also assemble. Good morning, Angie. How are you doing, sweetie? How's the foot? Good to see you in the space this morning. Thank you for dropping in. But when we muster and we do this thing called mobilizing, there may be a massness of it where you may think you just won, but then you have one here, one there, and one there. And before you have thousands, hundreds, thousands of people all rallying and mobilizing and mustering for the same concern. I've never been one for big crowds. I like it where, I can see my way to the ending, even when I am a jazz head, as everybody knows, love jazz. And I like smooth jazz. I know that there's the traditional jazz, but I'm a smooth jazz girl. And, even when I go to those events, you will never see me in the middle up towards the front. Absolutely not. No. I'm always at the back, not all the way in the back, but back enough that I know where my exit is. I know how to get up out of there, and I've already planned the route. So that's how I look at how, going to someplace like that where people have mustered together. You got to have an out, and so I look for one before I even sit down. So when we move on in the word, my you in mustering is unvarying, because generally people that muster together, there is a sole purpose. It may start with one purpose that started it off, and they may have layers on top of it where more things are added. And so it becomes more convoluted, more complex, more corrupt, or maybe even more diverse. It just depends, because people come together for the purpose of what it started as. And says unvarying, not changing originally, constant or uniform. So there's a reason that people come together. And let's face it, those of us who've been around a minute, we know, even you can look at children, and children will say, hey, look, we're going to have our little friends all come together over here, and leaving out one or two from that they don't want to play with. So it even starts, early, just the idea that we want these kids over those kids. We want these friends over those friends. And yeah, so sometimes what starts as being a good thing ends up having consequences or forming trouble spots. You see, universal. That's a good word for unvarying. Universal. That's right, because it basically everybody's in there for the same reason. Unvarying also means that generally it's changeless, it's constant, it's an invariant, and it's an invariable. So we as individuals, we sometimes need to be flexible, but we're not. Sometimes we don't want to get outside of what everyone else is doing, outside of thinking anyone else the way anyone else is thinking. And so therefore we may be caught up just because we can't find a way to explain, what we can't do with them. So we do it. We just assume, ascend into whatever else is going on. And sometimes that poses trouble. When we move on in our word of muster, my S, now we've done the M and the U, and the S is for summons. Sometimes we're summons to be places. Every once in a while, I'll get those summons to be, to be a part of the court system and go down for jury duty. And I got to admit, the last one I got last year, I think it was, I don't know, it was almost near where I was getting ready to leave for Australia or something. But anyway, I never answered it. I said, ooh, they're going to get me. Well, they didn't bother me. They must have had enough people where they didn't bother me. But generally speaking, when you get those summons, it's supposed to be your duty that you would go. And I generally have gone, and sometimes not wanting to, because it does take out of your day. And I think the last time I went, they I want to say they gave us a check. It was small, maybe $17.50, enough for a lunch or something. But you had to park your car at a certain place and be at a certain place and do what was necessarily. But they told you what time you needed to muster and that you were summoned to do it. So therefore, you had no way out. Okay. Jones says safeguard and schedule. It is a schedule. If you've ever been summoned, it is a schedule. So summons says send for urgent demand. When you're summoned, it's an urgency there to it. Come help. I mean, that's HELP. That's what they want you to do. And they said you're called to attend. Could be a meeting. You're called to attend jury duty. You're called to attend, a particular function that may be mandatory, especially if you're in some clubs. They have mandatory times that people must be at certain meetings. And they count it against you as a negative if you don't attend. And if you miss so many days, it tells you, therefore, okay, you are no longer a part. And most people want to be a part of something. I don't care who they are. They want to be a part of something. And so that's why they might be, worried about that summons, and they will show up. So the summons also says that they've sent for you, they've called for you, they've asked for you, they've convened, they've assembled, they've ordered you, because in some instances, some of those things you will report on at, it says there might be a rally of some sort, and basically it is considered a roundup, because once you get in any kind of jury. The last one I went to, I remember somehow or another it was compromised by the individual that was in the group with us. Because the judge asks you questions. Do any part of the incident that occurred that caused it to be required to be considered judged by law? They asking you all these things, and most of us said we knew nothing. And there was someone that stood up and gave out this thing, and basically they made it where they suspended us even dealing with it at all. The entire assemblage of people, all of us that had to muster, and told us that we would not be selected for jury for a minimally of 1 year, at a minimum of 1 year, because we had basically been tainted by the information we heard. So we got a reprieve, but we didn't know all that what went down, because I didn't understand it all, but the judge and everyone else did. My T for muster is together. When you are together with a lot of people, generally, and you've all assembled maybe for a church function, a school function, a club, an organization, something. I was even looking the other day. I know our church does them a lot, our food giveaways, and I was just looking at all the people that come for that service. But the fact that it is a service is one thing, but the fact that everyone realizes what it could do for them, they come. And so the like Joan said, the idea is universal. Everybody's coming for what's being given away, and people will muster. And sometimes it says that the doors will open at 8 o'clock. People are there at 5, because they want to be a part of that. And that's us as individuals. Sometimes we show up early just so we can be a part of what is going on, and we will muster on time or ahead of time, just making sure. Joan says the task, the team, yes, and the tally, all good, because the tally would be the total number. The task is that everyone is probably in on what it is that's being requested. And of course, the team. Sometimes teams are formed within the team. It's like out of the assemblage. I've seen it where there were so many people where they end up saying, well, we're going to have this 50 people stay here, this 50 people here, and this, where they actually have to break them up into smaller groups, just saying that the togetherness has to be, cut down because there's too many. So together means within proximity to another person or people. And it says you're with each other conjointly, or in conjunction with, in cooperation with. Sometimes you don't even know that you're cooperating, except your presence may give an indication that you might be. You might be knowledgeable about what you're in there for. Then it says it's a collaboration, a partnership, and and the fact that it's unison, meaning that you came in on the same principle that everybody else did. The giveaway, the jury, whatever it is, it started it. It basically began in a certain way. My E today, I said exemplify. And exemplify just means serve as an example. Sometimes those groups, we get into them. Good morning, Adelia. How are you? Today, our word, of course, is muster. Muster, of course, is to assemblage of some sort, coming together for a particular reason. Many of us do. There's so many clubs out there that people belong to. I was trying to figure out, all the ones that I belong to, and I belong to a lot. And there's one other one I think I am going to join, only because it is a club of service. And, I got to this point in my life. That's what I love to do. I just want to serve, not asking much else. I want to serve other people, because I think that's what I'm going to say that's what I, was given, my life of service. And so exemplify means to serve as an example, as being demonstrated, to depict, To elucidate, which is to make it clear as to what it is that you want. Effect is good. Endorse, those are really good. Embody what it is that we're standing up for. Manifest, illustrate, personify, represent, effect. How effective are we in doing what it is that we've signed up for? Question, right? Because sometimes we sign up things and the thing that we've signed up for is bigger than us. It's bigger than what we can even imagine doing. So sometimes you do need the collective thoughts and personalities and bodies to get things done. And then other times it's too much for you to even be a part of it because it's beyond being effective. Sometimes things are so big, you ask who's running it. Everybody can't run it. Everyone cannot. So exemplify also talks about what is being displayed, what is being represented, and who's being enlightened. When you think about yourself of things that you've joined, and you've been out there and you've mustered for it, how many of you have retracted from what you stood up for originally? Because sometimes what happens is that what started originally one way takes a detour. And so that universal idea that Joan was talking about separates. And so it gets cloudy because people all of a sudden think, well, there's another way to approach this, and there's another way to look at this, and how can we? And so that's how you find groups that start and they section off. They just keep breaking off into other groups only because they've realized there was a way to exemplify themselves as being the example of going in other directions. But the mustering that brought them all together, that was right when they came together, but it changes later on, and everybody that's ever been in a group and they realize that things change, the people change, the ideas change, the concepts, the reality and bottom line, the money or the time, we change. We just change. And my last letter in muster is rally. How many of us have been a part of rallying? We didn't even realize we were rallying, but the military has always used a rally of the troops, the rallying of the troops, bringing them together for the purpose of service. But we as civilians do it too. We come together for whatever the reasons are, and we would rally to make a point, make money, make history, change things that have basically been around a while. And we can look back over our lives within the last, we can go 5 years. Within the last 5 years, think about all the things that have changed. Who changed them? How were they changed? Think of some of the events that were probably pretty huge things that made things change. Ramifications, that's a good word, because sometimes we have to think about the fact that we do have ramifications for whatever it is that we have done. Right or wrong, it happens. It says, but rallying usually is a coming together that continues, that we are fighting for the same effort, in it for till the end, if we can stay, unless, once again, everything changes and we realize that we can't stay any longer, then we get out. But rallying is what we started with, mustering. It's to assemble, to come together, to group, to maybe reform something, to unite, and basically become a part of something that may put the foundation down that history could be made. When I think about our lives as individuals, sometimes we get more out of being a part of a group emotionally than we do being the individuals that we are. And sometimes that works. Like I am a Rotarian. But, I also, believe that service is great, but I also believe God is wonderful. So, we're complexed in terms of how we may muster for something, but nonetheless, we do muster. Our lives are full of periods where we muster and rally and excuse me, show up. We show up for certain things that are dear to us or make sense to us or we want to be a part of. So, I think about what is it that you want to muster through for, say the next 6 months? What will you show up for? What will you be a part of? Um, this is a big year coming up for, obviously politics, the presidency. Will you go out? Will you get people excited about voting and go to rallies for just supporting that idea? Because if we don't have a voice in it, then we really can't complain about what it is that we get. But we should do, every effort should be made to support our ideas, our own ideas, and collectively maybe we have others who would muster with us. But listen, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I'm not going to tell you to muster. I'm not going to tell you that. But what I will tell you is to enjoy yourself. Have a good time this weekend, making it your time, whatever that is. Maybe it's some relaxation. Maybe it's reading. Maybe it's writing some things. I need to write. That's one of the things I want to do over the weekend. I want to go. I want to go see a movie. I'm trying to think of the name of it. I can't think of the name of it just because I put myself on it. But I want to see a movie. I already saw the color purple and really love that. But I think it's Ruskin. That's what I want to see. Rustin. I want to see that. But I think that's on Netflix. So I do plan on trying to watch that this weekend. But anyway, I want y'all to have a wonderful weekend. Do your best. Do your best. Be kind to people, and be equally kind to yourself, if not more kind. Okay. But I'm going to see you. Thank you, Joan. Thank you, Adelia. I'm looking at all the people that dropped by. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Angie, Maurice, Joan, Eddie, Miss Rosie, Cheryl, Yoga Row, all of y'all. Love you dearly. I'm going to see you on Monday. If you don't do anything else, just hit that share button. You don't have to put no money on it. Just hit the share. Let it be shared. Okay? Love you. Love you. Love you. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye. I'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye.